going to address you as Aaron Gleeman any longer. Instead, I'm just going to say, how is AaronGleeman.com? I'm going to think of you as an entity now, as a corporation, as an empire, as a media empire.
It's difficult to forget the name of the site if you have any interest in me or reading it. So I guess in that way, I will tell you, so this is what my blog 20-something years ago, so we just went back to that. We even used the same logo and everything. I did spend like 2 weeks trying to brainstorm an actual name for the site, like, I don't know, Gleeman on Baseball or something like that. And I had like a whole list, and none of them were good. And I just thought, what's the point of trying to actually brand it versus just, hey, where do you read Gleeman? Just Google. And plus, I feel like people just Google stuff anyway.
They do.
The days of saying,
that's true.
I'm sure you know this from doing live reads and stuff of like 15 years ago, you'd have to go www.
Yeah, that's true.
Now it's just like, look it up.
Yeah, you're right about that. That's very true. Were you just at the Getaway Day ball game?
Yes, you guys gave me a really good excuse to leave.
Oh, excellent.
A half inning early to beat the traffic.
And we lose the third game. The White Sox avoid the sweep. Was it last I saw? I think Garzington was 8-0.
I think that's what it ended as. It was a very ugly game.
Who was 3 errors I saw with these damaging errors as well.
3 errors, not just overall by the shortstop Tristan Gray made an error early and then had a double error play in the middle of the game too.
That's not good. Yeah. Who was hurling for the?
It was Taj Bradley. Who gave up 4 runs in the first inning.
Struggled with his control, I'm told, but uncharacteristically.
And then he was okay after that, but their defense was bad. And then
Who pitched for the White Sox?
Who did pitch for the White Sox? That's asking a lot.
Go to AaronGleeman.com and find that.
Yeah, that's it. It's all there.
For me to remember something I literally just came from watching. But, I mean, they were being no-hit into the 5th or the 6th. Yeah. I mean, it was bad. But they got the 2 wins. They won the series. Your guys, the White Sox, not a bad team. I was talking to Steve Stone, who's their longtime broadcaster.
Yeah.
And I always love seeing him when he comes down. Always super nice. Always loves to gossip.
Is he accommodating?
Yes.
And very engaging in the pro. That's great.
It's great. And so
he's a baseball asset. That's for sure.
Yes.
Guy knows.
I mean, he has a million stories.
Stuff, yeah.
And he was basically saying they kind of not quite Spurs-esque at that level, but kind of jumped the line on like, okay, maybe 2 years from now, this core could be pretty good. I'm not saying they're going to make a World Series run or anything, but I mean, they're solidly above 500, even after losing 2 out of 3 to the Twins. They got some good hitters. They've had a much better pitching staff than I would expect. And then the other thing is, by virtue of being so bad for about 5 years, the worst team in baseball, a couple of those years, they still have some firepower in the minors that they can still bring up. So, I mean, I don't know that they're going to be the force in this division, but I think...
Well, they've been so dreadful. It's obviously a change.
They've at least turned it around, and I think nobody expected them to be in second place at this point.
No, for sure. I'm looking at an Aaron Gleeman tweet, not an AaronGleeman.com tweet, although it's a link to something at AaronGleeman.com, naturally, in which you write about Justin Lawrence. This is the relief pitcher we just picked up for cash, I'm told. It was like $1.50 from the Pirates. Yeah. And you write why he might be viewed differently than the Twins' usual bullpen lottery tickets.
Yes.
Why differently? What stands out here?
First of all, he just made his Twins debut like an hour ago. Hit a guy in the arm with like a 97-mile-an-hour pitch, and the guy immediately left the game.
Really?
I would not be surprised if that was a broken something.
Oh, man.
But the only reason he's different, and this is a little bit sad maybe, state of the Twins, guaranteed contract. They're on the hook for like $800,000, which is not a lot in baseball. But as I wrote, what's the old saying? They throw around nickels like manhole covers or whatever it is.
It's the old Mike Ditka line with George Hallis many decades ago.
And then he also does not have a minor league option. So if he struggles a little bit, they can't just ship him to AAA.
Okay.
And that's similar to what happened with Simeon Woods Richardson last week, where Royce Lewis gets sent to AAA. Matt Wallner gets sent to AAA. Simeon Woods Richardson, 0-7 with a 7-something ERA. He would have been demoted to AAA probably weeks ago, but he was out of options. So you can't do that. You have to expose them to waivers. It's a whole transactional thing. So Justin Lawrence, 31, you say, well, if he's bad, they don't care about shipping him to AAA anyway, except if he's bad and they cut him, they're on the hook for $800,000. So most of the kind of revolving door of relievers that they've had this year and in past years, waiver claims, these cash considerations trade, like you mentioned, they're guys who are minimum salaried, non-guaranteed, optionable, flexibility. And he is much different than that, which makes me think I'm not that high on him. He's got a 5-something career ERA. He's a journeyman, but it does make me think that he'll get a little bit more of a runway, and they still need any kind of bullpen help.
How old is he?
31.
Oh, he is 31. Because I was about to ask, might he also be different in that?
That's young for this bullpen.
Well, that's true. Maybe it's a step in the right direction. We talked about this, I think, last time. Having a bunch of journeymen on there that aren't going anywhere as opposed to, well, let's take a look at this guy. Let's take a look because maybe he's got some talent and we got time. Yeah. We got nothing but time, and he's 27 years old. But
they've done a little bit more of that.
Yeah.
Andrew Morris, who's a prospect, they've added at least a little more high-octane velocity with some guys. Yoandres Gomez is a guy that they picked up cheaply who's closed a few games for them now. There's a little bit more mid-90s instead of low-90s velo. It's still, I don't think, a good bullpen, but it's been more serviceable than it was probably for most of April at least.
A lot of good texts already coming in. We're going to get to Lewis here in just a minute.
Hit a grand slam today, by the way.
Did he really?
2 homers last night, grand slam today.
So he's averaging more than a home run a game, right, for the last 7? Is it 7 home runs in 10 or 10 home runs in 7?
8 now, including the one today.
8
okay. In 11 games since the demotion. And of note, which we can get into later, played second base today.
Oh, the plot thickens. Yeah. Interesting. Let's divert here for a moment. We early in the show, I was mentioning there was a live shot during the ESPN NBA broadcast from where else? They're in San Antonio, so of course, where do they situate? Where's the shot?
Riverwalk?
Yeah. No, in this case, it's the Alamo.
Oh, okay.
It's got to be the Alamo.
Okay.
And we were trying to figure out what is the one. And in San Antonio, it seems like there is only one choice: the Alamo and maybe Riverwalk.
Yeah,
that's it. So if we ever get good enough to where the shows come to us, the studio shows, where do they set them up in front of? What's the most iconic, symbolic? This says Minneapolis. Let's leave St. Paul out for the moment. We are in Minneapolis, Minnesota. What's the shot?
I think you go a couple blocks from here, right? Yangtze parking lot. I'll be there already. I can go on the pregame show. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean,
we don't have one like that, I don't think. I mean, you got the Spoon if you want, I guess. Yeah. And you got,
I feel like a lot of the iconic Minneapolis stuff, and I'm a Minneapolis resident, I love it, is related to the sports arenas. You know what I mean? And so it's like, okay, you could do it outside of Vikings. You could do it outside Target Field. You could do it,
That doesn't excite me.
Yeah, there's some good views. Go up to
there are good views.
John Bonus's penthouse condo, which I'll let you KFAN listeners into a little behind the scenes. They've been in Europe for a couple weeks. They live on the top floor of my ears pop when I go into the elevator.
Right.
He has a dog that they didn't take, Rosa, a great dog.
They just left the dog in the penthouse?
Here are his dog sitters. You guys might want to sit down.
I know most of them,
They're splitting duties, okay? Max Fuller, who I saw at the game last night, who's now at least recovered enough from his broken jaw to talk.
He still can't eat.
Yeah, he was telling me.
It's unbelievable.
This is why he had to split dog sitting duties, because he was not comfortable staying at their apartment because he has like special shakes that he has to drink.
That's it. That's all he can have. And he's lost 20 pounds.
Yeah, well, he was so fat. He was so fat to begin with.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
And he's splitting dog sitting duties with Zach Halverson. Imagine those were your two. I love them both.
That's as good as it gets.
But imagine those were your two go-tos. I figured the listeners would like that.
That's outstanding. Yeah, I don't think some people said, Mary Tyler Moore statue. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's nice, but I don't know if that's a backdrop for a TV set.
See, now I'm obsessed with probably forgetting something very obvious.
I don't think we are. That's the thing.
No, we went through it in the first segment. And the Alamo is a tough bar.
Well, right.
It is.
We're not going to have
as much historic. Yeah, it's not like there was a great battle fought here.
We were saying, we got we got Fort Snelling, but that's not quite the same thing.
No,
and I don't know if there's an iconic front to that.
Mall of America, like the rotunda at the Mall of America,
sadly, it did come up. Yeah, that's unfortunate. I mean, I don't think that's anything to be that proud of.
I'm just thinking.
It's okay.
When I was a kid, WCW Nitro, the wrestling show, did a show in the rotunda, and I thought that was like a huge deal.
You loved that, didn't you?
It was like 1996 or whatever it was.
Yeah. Well, we're still working on that. We need to come up with something because eventually, allegedly, one of these teams, are going to be good enough to get closer to that.
But not buying it. I'm 43.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
I was 8 when the Twins won the second World Series that I vaguely remember as an 8-year-old, and it's been a little while.
State Fair, like one of the iconic, like one of the gates of the State Fair. That's not probably big enough.
right in front of the Sweet Martha's, maybe. That'd be a good.
Yeah. We need to work on that.
It's a sad conversation.
It is, unfortunately. That's very.
Although
true.
I would go for some Sweet Martha's.
Yeah, I figured you would. All right, let's get our first pause in. AaronGleeman.com is in studio. A lot of good texts already coming in. We'll cover a lot of baseball, and we'll cover perhaps some NBA Finals and Timberwolves with him as well. Kessler allegedly will be wheeled in on a gurney when he joins us at 5:30. Well, I might be exaggerating that a little bit, but he is still recovering from that knee surgery.
For sure.
You know he'll milk it, and then he'll be angry when we make a big deal of it, even though he wants us to make a big deal of it, correct?
Including dropping the name of his surgeon, who also did J.J. McCarthy's meniscus.
That's true. He might have mentioned that like 5 times a week ago.
You're listening to Barrero.
So what we seem to have with the Twins at this point, and now we played a pretty good number of games, right?
Yeah.
We're pretty well into this thing.
40%, something like that?
Yeah, so almost half is there's no consistency to the club, right? We started the season, 2-6, and then we had a good stretch, and then we had a bad stretch, we had another good stretch, a bad stretch. This road trip, we start with a sweep. And then the last 7, we lose 6 of those 7, I believe.
5 in a row they lost.
5 in a row included.
Then they bounce back. They win 2 versus the White Sox.
Yes,
and
that's
then
right.
lay an egg today.
So does that define, mediocrity, you're just kind of an okay little club, or is there something you can pick up in the pattern about what it means regarding the team?
I think it's been tough for them to get on this past, let's say, 3 or 4 weeks especially, to get on a better winning streak. I mean, last year we saw 13 in a row. The year before that, 12 in a row. Because they don't have the consistency with starting pitching, because the injuries have really wiped out all their depth in the rotation. They're at a point now, we didn't know until like 20 minutes ago who was going to start tomorrow's game, because they no longer have 5 healthy starting pitchers.
So who do we have out now officially?
They lose Pablo Lopez immediately. David Festa they lose. Mick Abel they lose. And then you even have some fill-in guys, Kendry Rojas. And then Simeon Woods-Richardson was so bad that they DFA him, so he's out of the picture. And then they're down. They still have Joe Ryan, who's been great. Taj Bradley, who had been good, but is maybe getting a little wobbly, including today. And then they have guy Connor Prelip, who's probably should still be at AAA. He's a rookie. He's been okay, solid. And then Zebby Matthews, who began the year at AAA because he had a rough spring training. He's been forced back in. And then they just don't have a 5th guy. And so tomorrow, I think it's going to be Andrew Morse starting it, and then it's just going to be all hands on deck. Bullpen game, which teams do that more to, yes, probably.
They do. Yeah.
But with Bailey Ober out, who I didn't even mention him, he's now out, shut down for a couple weeks, and then we'll see. You don't want to do a bullpen game for more than like 1 turn through the rotation, because you're just blowing out the bullpen, and they've had enough issues with short starts. So, you do a bullpen game, you're trying to get 2 or 3 innings from a couple guys, and then the normal bullpen distribution after that. You can do that once a week, maybe, but you don't want to like replace Ober's spot in the rotation with bullpen games, because then it affects the game before that, the game after that, and they're just not in a position from a bullpen standpoint. We've talked about that all year. The bullpen's just not that good, and so you can't put more weight on them. I mean, they're struggling just to carry a normal weight workload-wise.
Update us on Buxton, because I think we all felt like, okay, somehow we figured it out where if he's going to play, he's going to play in center field. And then we had this late stretch where he's back to DHing. Is that fixed now? Are we ushering in a new era of frustration when it comes to his ability to play center? What do you know?
So he's been back in center a couple times now this week. He still, to me, doesn't look like his usual self, but even him at 75% is pretty fast. He's been so good offensively, though. He's got like the 4th most homers in the league, that, even as a DH, he's their best hitter usually. So it hurts them defensively when he's out, and it also hurts them from like a flexibility standpoint, because he's at DH, then you have to decide, do you want to play your normal DH somewhere else? Then it's taking someone else's bat out of the lineup, etc. But he's at least back to where he can play mostly center field now, but he was dealing with a hip injury, like a hip strain, which he's had multiple different years that I've covered him. And then also he banged his shoulder while sliding into a base on the last road trip. So then he was struggling to throw. So when you have two things, they're like, let's just put him at DH. Right. He's feeling better now. He's at least feeling well enough to play mostly center field. But the other thing is, like, it's not – I would much rather prioritize just how are we getting his bat in the lineup, because it's not as if they have a logjam of great bats that would normally be at first base or DH. So, you're taking Josh Bell out of the lineup, who struggled. Victor Caratini doesn't play as much DH or first base. So, I mean, the priority is getting Buxton in there. I mean, by his standards, he's played, 52 out of the first 64 games or something. He's got 17 or 18 homers. He's probably going to be an all-star again. So he's been good. But, yeah, I mean, it's a situation because of his track record. Anytime he gets banged up, and anytime he's banged up enough to not play center, because he's always pushing, he wants to play center, and he also wants to avoid the IL. I think that's one of the – I've covered him since 2019, and I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions is whenever you have a guy who's injured so often, people assume, like, he's choosing to sit out anytime he's not 100%. My experience with Buxton is it's the exact opposite. Yep. And sometimes he will not physically hurt himself, but he will hurt himself by insisting on not going on the IL. And sometimes it resolves itself and, he misses less time. But my experience with him is he wants to play, sometimes to the point that they have to say to him, it's a long season. Your hip's been a problem. Like, let's put you at DH at least to alleviate some of that.
AaronGleeman.com is in studio. You mentioned Royce earlier on a home run tear. So what's the path here? What do you think the grand plan is moving forward on him?
So it's been about 2 weeks since they sent him to AAA, and he's got 8 homers in 11 games. And I think when they sent him down, similar to when they sent down Matt Wallner like a week earlier, or not even a week earlier, I don't think they intended it to be like a 2-week thing. I think they intended it to be more of like a full reset, physically, mentally, change the swing, cut down on the strikeouts, really put together, hopefully, a month at AAA where you're just a good, solid player. But they didn't bank on him hitting 8 homers in 11 games. And so that is, and I know people will dismiss it that it's against AAA pitching, and that's fair. Guys don't do that at AAA either, usually. And so I think it probably is enough to make them rethink at least the timeline of what they expected this demotion to be. But the other issue is, almost in tandem with sending him down a couple weeks ago, they moved Brooks Lee, who had been the starting shortstop and had struggled defensively, to third base, which was vacated by Royce Lewis going to AAA. Every indication I've got is Brooks Lee's not moving back to shortstop, and they actually like him at third base. And I think he can be a very good third baseman, too, much better than he was at shortstop. And so that blocks a little bit of a quick return path of like, okay, no harm, no foul. You just crush AAA for 2 weeks. We'll just stick you right back at third base. Well, I don't think they're going to disrupt what Brooks Lee's got going on. And so that's why it was interesting today, in addition to Royce Lewis hitting another homer grand slam today, he started at second base, which he has only played one game in the majors at second base a couple years ago. And if people remember, it was in September of 2024, and they kind of approached him and said, we'd like to work you into the mix at second.
Yeah.
And he didn't love that idea.
Yep.
And his thing that he said at the time was, it's one thing to tell me during the offseason, work on second base or go to the minors and work on it. But in September of what was, at that point, it fell apart, but it was a pennant race potentially. He basically said, I don't want to make a fool of myself at second base. And so I understand that. So he only ended up playing one game there. So now it's like, okay, well, they're probably going to work him in at second. He's still playing some third at AAA. I bet we will see him at first, or DH first. I don't think we'll see him in the outfield. But that adds a wrinkle to the whole when can he return, because just based on hitting, guy hits 8 homers in 11 games, get him back there. But they can also position it as, well, we need him to get comfortable at other positions because he's not just going to play third base. So I think maybe what they have envisioned for him, whether it's next week, 2 weeks from now, you come back as more of a super utility. You play some third when Brooks Lee's out. You play maybe some second if he looks decent there. You play some first. You can certainly be a DH just to get his bat in the lineup. And I think that's what they would want to do with him at this point. They don't want to disrupt Brooks Lee at third base. The other thing is, I don't think it makes sense to call Royce Lewis back up if you're not going to give him the full runway to play at least, 4 or 5 times a week. And it's very easy to find a spot in the lineup, even at first base, versus left-handed pitchers. But most of the time, you're going to be facing right-handed pitchers. It's a little trickier there because Cody Clemens has done a nice job at first base. They have a few more left-handed bats and switch hitters.
Has he been humbled enough that he knows he really can't drag his feet no matter what they have in mind at this point?
That's always the question. Because he's very optimistic, rosy personality. Yeah. He's a good guy. But sometimes I think people struggle with some of the things he says where it's like, is there a self-awareness here or understanding the situation? I will say, though, from everything I've heard from everyone in St. Paul and even talking to like Derek Shelton today about it, I don't think he was happy with the demotion. Nobody would be. But he reported to St. Paul. He went right into the lineup. He's been hitting homers ever since. Everything that I've heard from St. Paul is he's been working hard. He's been listening. He's not been causing any sort of drama there. And so I will give him credit. And, what they wanted him to do, it wasn't a demotion to, get this guy out of our, plans forever. They wanted him to reset and come back and be an impact player for this season. He still has 2 years of team control remaining, whether that's with the Twins in their plans or potentially he could have some trade value, let's say. They didn't want to just bury him at AAA. They weren't expecting this to happen this suddenly and this extreme, but they did want him to come back. And so I do give him credit to take this in relative stride and put together a monster 2 weeks at AAA and at least put yourself in a position where you're forcing them to make a decision on you. We've talked about the saga. Somebody's mentioning Royce Lewis Jersey Day is coming up. Yeah. Is that true? So June 6th, which is in 3 days from now?
I think it's Saturday, the 3rd,
was supposed to be, it was on the schedule all year as Royce Lewis replica jersey giveaway, I think, first 10,000 fans at Target Field. So I noticed a week ago that was removed from the promotional calendar. And then they ended up adding a Byron Buxton T-shirt giveaway that had previously not been anywhere to that. But then I heard from the Saints that they're that same night, June 6th in St. Paul. Now, we're assuming he's still in St. Paul 3 days from now. They're doing a Royce Lewis T-shirt giveaway. So now I think that's a clever idea to sort of, a little cheeky. But also, what happened to those 10,000 jerseys? Because they're not giving away the jerseys. So those could be, they're probably given to kids in some, country. Because you always see pictures of NBA champion hats for the runner-up.
Yes,
they were produced and they get handed out. That's kind of how I'm envisioning the Royce Lewis replica giveaway.
That's, by the way, I think we talked about the attendance thing before. How vacant is the building right now?
It's pretty vacant. I mean, if you look at the number, actually, they're 35,000, I think, below last year's pace through the same number of home games. But that includes some tricky accounting because there was
we talked about
one
that,
game,
right?
I think April 17th against the Reds. They essentially gave away 20,000 tickets. Anybody who had bought a ticket directly through them for opening day or the home opener because it had been delayed by the power outage. So they just gave everyone a comp ticket and somehow were able to count that as attendance. So there's 20,000. You subtract that, they're probably 55, 60,000. There's been some other giveaway type stuff. But I will say even beyond the relatively slight drop in attendance from last year was the lowest since the Metrodome days. First of all, it's, half of what the announced attendance usually, I would say. It's been a little better now that the weather's nice, but there were definitely some games in April, and this is often the case in cold weather cities, where it's announced attendance 17,500, and you look and there's, 4,400 people there or something like that.
So have we played enough of the season to get clues from your standpoint covering this team as to what the plan is heading into the trade deadline on, for example, Joe Ryan?
Yeah. They won't talk about that sort of stuff yet, but I would say just logically, they're, handful of games below 500 now. I think at last year's trade deadline, they were maybe 6 games below 500, something like that. If you end up in roughly the same spot, and this year's deadline, I think, is August 3rd, it's a little bit later than usual. If you're, 6, 8, certainly 10 games below 500 at that point, which I would probably project them to be, given the state of the rotation especially, Joe Ryan has the rest of this season and then one more season after this, and then he's a free agent. If you think you're going to be a contender next year, then, yeah, sure, you would want Joe Ryan at the top of your rotation. But I think realistically, I'm not sure there are many Twins fans who would expect them to be contenders next year. And so then it's a matter of nobody wants to trade Joe Ryan. He's one of the best pitchers they've developed in, since Johan Santana probably. But you also don't want to lose him for nothing after next season. Right. And you might get draft pick compensation or whatever. But if he's pitching at an all-star level come the end of July, you could get not only more for him than a draft pick compensation, but more immediate help. You could get AA or AAA or even major league guys for him. So my assumption with him has not really changed. It's if they are solidly below 500, I would expect him to certainly be shopped around, much like last year. You know, I would have said the same thing about Pablo Lopez, but now he's out of the picture because of the injury. I think Ryan Jeffers, who was off to a great start as their starting catcher, but is now out for a couple months with a broken hamate bone, he's an impending free agent. So that one makes a lot of sense to trade, although it's not always easy to trade a starting catcher because most contending teams don't have a hole at catcher. It's easy to trade a frontline starting pitcher because there's never been a baseball team ever that couldn't use one more frontline starting pitcher.
So we can get what for him? We can get a grade A prospect and another player? I mean, how highly regarded is he, you think, in baseball circles? Pretty
highly regarded. I mean, it's a little tricky because we might also see like two-time Cy Young winner Tarek Skubal might be on the block because the Tigers have been so bad. It depends what other guys are being shopped around from a frontline starter perspective. But I would say if Joe Ryan is pitching like this and is healthy at that point, I certainly, at minimum, I think you would get one top 100 prospect, which is sort of the currency baseball that's equivalent to like maybe a first-round pick, let's say. You might be able to squeeze a second one out. It also depends. Like last year at the deadline, the Twins got some good prospects, but they prioritized guys who were close to the majors or who had already appeared in the majors. And so instead of, let's say, low A 19-year-old guy, well, you're sacrificing upside for, you know, closeness to the majors and that. So it depends. If they're willing to take some teenage guys who are 3 or 4 years away, you can get higher upside, maybe multiple top 100 guys, versus if you're insisting on, you know, major league ready guys, you might only get one. But I mean, I would expect Ryan to have as much trade value as pretty much anybody they've traded in recent memory.
So he's signed through next season?
Yes, he's arbitration eligible for next year. He'll probably make, I don't know, 10 or 12 million, something like that.
So there's two ways to look at having this conversation about, you know, entertaining the idea of trading him. One is, who are we kidding? We're not really going anywhere, so we're going to have to, you know, kind of regroup in a lot of areas. And so if we can get some really good, highly valued talent, presumably other pitchers that are a little bit further away, let's go ahead and do it. On the other hand, and this is an important distinction for me at least, if the real reason you say you might as well deal him is once he's done with his contract, there's going to be demand for him, and you're not going to want to afford him at that point because it's going to be too much money. I hate the psychology of that, even at a place like this where you go, that's what drives people insane is you got to trade him before you lose him because we can't compete for his salary. To me, that continues to be, even for a team in their payroll position, self-defeating.
Yeah, I agree completely. It is unfortunate to be in a spot as a team to even 2 or 3 years out to be sort of counting down to the guy's free agency. And Twins fans, unfortunately, have experienced that over decades and decades and different ownerships even. But I do think that's the reality. I mean, he's going to be in line for what I would say well over, if he's healthy, well over $100 million. What are the odds of what we know of the Minnesota Twins right now giving him that sort of contract? And also, if from Joe Ryan's perspective, he's gone through some real tough times here with the Minnesota Twins. He can see the finish line of free agency. And even if they were to say to him, hey, 18 months before you're able to negotiate with 30 teams, what do you think about taking 100 and whatever it is? If you're him, maybe you take that because there's the injury risk, and he's had some injuries. But also, you've made it this far if you're him, and he's made some millions. He's okay. You're probably thinking, do I even want to be here with a team that isn't spending and hasn't won for a while, where I can choose where I'm from? He's from California. Maybe he wants to play for the Padres or the Giants or whatever it is. Those teams have money, too. I think from his perspective, and I agree it's unfortunate, it's pathetic, really, that it's like an impossibility that you might just sign a guy to a long-term contract. But I do think that's the reality of it. And, you know, what are the odds if you're a player like Joe Ryan or even Ryan Jeffers now, who's going to be a free agent in 5 months? What are the odds that the Twins are going to pay you more than another team would pay you if you just make it to free agency anyway? And then it's, do you want to be here?
Do we still assume Buxton wants to be here?
Well, that's the other question, too. So he's been so steadfast over years and years, and people saw it like at the All-Star game last year where the national media interviewed him and stuff. And I would say my understanding from talking to him, but then also just reading stuff that he's said on national stages, his thing is, I don't want to leave. I want to finish my career here. My family loves it here. I love the organization. But I think his other thing is he's 32. And as a center fielder, the clock is always ticking from an athleticism standpoint. Yep. He's got 2 more years after this one. He's only making $15 million a year. That's not even a top 100 salary in baseball. He's healthier than he's been over the last couple of years than he was previously. He's going to make probably a second All-Star game in a row. If you're him, it's like, I want to be here, but I also want a chance to win here. And if what I really think he expressed at the end of last year and then even this offseason, I don't think he wants to be the last man standing. I don't think he wants to look around that clubhouse and see the empty Ryan Jeffers locker and the empty Joe Ryan locker and have a team with a $70 million payroll where he's making 15 and nobody else is making more than 5 or 10. And you just look and you go, I got 2 or 3 years left as a prime player here, and then I'm just sort of wasting it. And again, much like the Ryan contract, that stinks that's the scenario. But he does have a no trade. He has made it very clear in the past that he's not going to request a trade because he wants to go play somewhere. Mm-hmm. But I do think you can push someone to a breaking point from a competitiveness standpoint. I don't think it's about money. I don't think it's about not liking it here. I think he loves it here. But also, do you want to win somewhere or do you want to lose here? And if that's the scenario that they're presenting with him, I wouldn't blame him for, wanting out or at least being open to the idea of leaving. But until he says, sort of like the Correa situation around this time last year, where it was like, well, he's got a no trade. But then it started to, waver a little bit. And it was like, well, he might take a trade to Houston. And once that comes out, then the floodgates open. Until we get some sense of that, and again, that depends on them continuing to not be competitive this year, Buxton, all he needs to say is, well, I'm open to it. And I think at that point, then the discussion becomes, well, what can you get for him? You can get a lot for him. I mean, 2.5 years remaining at $15 million a year for an all-star center fielder. That is, I know there's all the injury stuff with him.
Yes.
But the way he's played the last 2 or 3 years, that's a $30 million player. And so there's excess value in addition to just the impact of the player that he can make.
All right, I got some more baseball to get to when we come back. I've got some basketball to get to. And believe it or not, I have some football to get to, which I know you don't consider like
Let's do hockey. Let's do everything.
We might get to hockey. We'll see. AaronGleeman.com is in studio. Kessler at about 5:30.
You're listening to Barrero on The Fan.
Keep listening for the next chance to win your way to our iHeartRadio.
AaronGleeman.com. Here's my football question. It's really not a football question per se. I just wanted to say that to sensationalize it a little bit and get your attention. Yeah, exactly it. I feel like in the professional sports world right now, there are a lot of, catchphrases and buzzwords. That are more modern. What are our favorite ones, Guardsy?
Collaboration, alignment, intentionality, consensus.
But I believe football and football executives and coaches take the cake on this more than any other. And I'm curious because you cover baseball all the time now. Do you hear, am I just not paying attention because it's the Twins? Do you hear all that same word salad stuff in baseball as much as we seem to in football?
Yeah.
Or what do you hear?
The collaboration aspect is definitely big with baseball because I think, especially with baseball, there's like the flow of information has to get from sort of the quants in a front office to the players on the field, and that kind of passes through the coaching staff a lot of the time. And so, collaboration is definitely one that the front office guys talk about, the coaching staff talks about, of like, what you could have the best information in the world, but if you're not getting it to a player, and even beyond that, like getting it to a player in a way that they understand or are somewhat enthusiastic about it. And I mean, that was the thing with Molitor. who super well-respected baseball guy, beloved there, and is now doing, broadcast is great. But they felt like that last season with Molitor, I remember Ryan Presley was a good pitcher, and they felt like they wanted, I think the story went that they wanted Presley to make some adjustments with his curveball, and they just could not kind of get that information in his hands in a way that got him enthused. They traded him to the Astros.
The rest is history.
2 days later, he's throwing the new curveball, and he's great, and that was like, it has to be collaborative. It has to be. So, yeah, I mean, baseball has its own set of
it does have that. Okay.
lingo and all that.
Sorry to hear that.
They're maybe not as bad as football. Because I think what football has, as an outsider looking at it, they also have the top secret aspect.
True.
Where it's like Fort Knox with everything in football. Where in baseball, it's a little bit we're just playing baseball here.
Right. Yeah. By the way, has Varland given up a run yet? Speaking of relief pitchers who used to be here,
reliever of the month in April, and I think his ERA is now lower than it was when he won reliever of the month in April. But the good news is both players that the Twins got in that trade are injured. So
even better.
Yeah.
So it's a win-win, is what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely win-win.
Yeah.
All right, here is my football or basketball item.
That one I kind of least fake, better than football.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I don't know that we talked about this last time. Because I don't think the Wolves season was the Wolves season over when you last came in.
Yeah.
Maybe it may have just ended. Whatever. Everybody's got an idea of what to do.
Sure.
It's fairly clear that and I do give Conley credit for this because he doesn't speak in word salad, or didn't in the press conference. You didn't have to read between the lines to say he ain't happy, and they're gonna. If they don't do something pretty big on the seismic scale or the Richter scale, it won't be for lack of trying. That I think he says, no, this ain't going to work for us. We're not finishing sixth every year.
Right.
I'm not happy with this. But obviously, the challenge is, well, okay, that sounds good.
But what are the resources?
What are you going to do, and what do you want? Who's the player out there that you think is gettable, that you think makes sense for this club? Or do you subscribe to the notion, and I don't know how you sell this, but you could try selling it to the owners. Look, we're going to trade Randall, we know that. And we hope we can get immediate help there. But we may end up trading Rudy, too.
Right.
And the thinking is it's going to loosen some other things up for us. But if we do that with Rudy, it may well be we can get a surprising amount of pretty damned good, interesting young talent. But we might have a year.
Take a step back.
That we got to take off. What's the term they use in the cliche when you take a year off?
Gap year.
Gap year.
Yeah.
Where you got to just acknowledge, as hard as that is, given they've sort of gotten to this one point, you want them to take the next step, and you got Edwards waiting because he's anxious. So what interests AaronGleeman.com? Which approach interests you? Could you live with a gap year if somebody says to you, you know what? We're going to get in 3 years,
right.
We're going to be able to or 2 years, maybe we're going to be able to retool in a way that'll keep us viable for the next 5. Or do you say, can't wait. There's no such thing as a gap year as long as you have Anthony Edwards. We got to go out and get another star.
Well, I think normally when you have these two monster teams in the same conference with OKC and the Spurs, it's not a bad idea to be like, okay, they're going to both be really good for the next year or two. But the problem with the Spurs, and I think still probably Oklahoma, they're so young and they have so many assets that I think they're going to be good for a
Another
while.
10.
So I don't know that like a gap year is really going to break through there. But my real concern with that, and I think it's a viable idea, it's a little bit like the Buxton conversation that we had. The danger if you take a step back for a year or two is, does Anthony Edwards want to take a step back for a year or two?
Yeah, right.
And let's say he's willing to do that, but then he gets to the end of the year or two and they've, missed the playoffs, or they finished 7th, or they've been in the play-in. I mean, the moment he decides he's not happy, then that is a much bigger issue than anything from a roster building standpoint beyond him. So I don't know. I do think I'm on the same page. Like I didn't love Randall's fit really at any point. He had some better moments than I expected at various points, but I think if you can shed that salary and get some level of value for him, even kind of neutral value, you can insert Nas into the starting lineup. The Gobert thing is interesting. I do agree with you that I think he is generally more valued by front offices than he is like the average fan in the NBA, because people love to goof on, Luka making the shot over him. But the reality is the on-off numbers for him defensively are incredible. Every year he's finishing top 5 for Defensive Player of the Year. And I think even just watching the Wolves, you see it. Like, he's incredibly frustrating at times to watch offensively. And there are situations where he's not on the court because he's not an asset offensively. But he's such a tone setter for what they've been able to do defensively that I worry. Yes, I would be very open to trading him, especially if you can get decent value for him. But my worry is he representing more of what we think of their defensive identity than maybe we even realize? And if you remove him, it's not as simple as just filling in the gaps with another big shot blocker or something like that. But, I mean, that is the path forward, because the problem, I know everyone wants to trade for Giannis or something like that. They don't have pick assets to make that happen. I mean, they're picking 28th this year. I think the next pick they can trade is like 2032 or something like that. They can do some pick swaps. But unless you find some GM who's going to go nuts for Randall or Gobert, I just don't think you can do it. And losing DiVincenzo as sort of a low-salary guy hurts on that front, too. It hurts the team, but also hurts their ability to put together some of these trade packages, which I think then gets you to like the second-tier either rehab project like Kyrie Irving or the high-risk guys like a Zion Williamson, where it's just like, do you try to talk yourself into change for change sake and go, oh, well, Williamson has this upside, and then you maybe get him, and a year in you go, well, I get why everybody's been frustrated with him. But that's, like you said,
games.
I don't think they can just sort of stand pat, because the rest of the conference will sort of pass them by. And so I do agree with you about Conley. Like, I do enjoy watching his press conferences relative to, let's say, Twins officials' press conferences, because he's not always revealing everything, obviously.
No, he's not scorched earth.
But he's at least answering a question. When someone says, do you guys think you have to make changes? He won't go, we haven't really thought about it. He'll at least give you some answer. And as you said, he is going to explore every opportunity. And I haven't loved every move he's made. I think more often than not, they've worked out pretty well. I mean, this is the most successful period in franchise history, but you at least know he's going to make every call. He's going to push every envelope.
I missed it. Gargi, were you able to listen to Finchie?
A little bit.
With PA Today?
Yeah.
I heard a little bit of it, but I obviously didn't hear the key aspect of it, which this fascinates me. I had not heard this one before. I don't know that I buy it, but here's the quote. We saw what TJ can do. It was good to see him back. We finally found the best deployment of him. He's one of these guys who needs the ball in his hands more. I think he can play well alongside Anthony as the primary ball handler. I think that's part of the solution there internally. He's just got to stay healthy and continue to build on what he did. Because part of the solution, everybody says, well, you got to get a guard to play so that Anthony doesn't always have the ball. I'm intrigued by what TJ represents. I'm still not sure I'm convinced he's a starting guard on a team that wants to go someplace. I don't know. But that's interesting that Finchie was that generous in his conversation about him.
Well, and I think that comes from everybody saw in the playoffs. Like, for so much of when Shannon's played the last 2 years, it's like stand in the corner.
Yeah, right. I think they figured that was a blunder.
That's not his game.
Right.
And in the playoffs, we saw they give him the ball 25 feet out at the top, and he just attacks. Like almost kind of mini Ant, but going to his left more often. And I think that was eye-opening. I don't know that I buy him as like a primary ball handler. I think there's going to be some issues in terms of, turnovers and stuff there. But as like a microwave guy off the bench, six-man type, especially if Nas is moving into the starting lineup, I kind of like that. I still think, what you really need is a time machine with Mike Conley.
Yeah,
you need Mike Conley from 8 years ago or whatever, even 5 years ago. And that is such a perfect sort of low-maintenance, ball handling, shooting threes, tough on defense. That ship has sailed with Conley, obviously. So I don't know. I mean, I like Ayo also.
Yes.
But he's not like a pure point. He's more of a secondary wing attack, which I like. And I think they're going to make an effort to re-sign him.
Well, I would put it this way. If your top 4 guards can be Edwards, Kyrie, Ayo, and Shannon, you got something interesting going there in the backcourt, I think. Now, I don't even know if that configuration is realistic.
A couple of them can size up to a wing if you want, especially like late in games. I mean, the Kyrie thing, it's kind of like what we're talking about with like the risk-reward is like, yes, Kyrie pre-injury is an all-star perfect fit from a ball handling, shot making. What is he now off the injury? But then also, even without the injury, he's like in his mid-30s at this
32,
point.
I think.
So there's some natural aging there with like a small guard maybe. But I think that, assuming Giannis is just kind of a pipe dream, not doable, I think, you're into Kyrie, you're into Zion, that sort of category where it's like you're not going to feel super confident, but at least it has some upside.
I waited way too long to get into this, and so maybe we'll just touch the surface on it and get back to it next time you're on. Your initial gut reaction to the owner's proposal about a salary cap, which has tended to be a non-starter, I will tell you that I thought the numbers within that, as in terms of what the floor was, the salary cap floor, surprised me and was interesting. And then there's still a gap, I think, between the floor and the ceiling of, is it about 80? I think it was from in that range, 170 to 250, or was it 230?
Yeah,
in that range. So I get it. The players, this has been the strongest union. But I got to tell you, I don't think it's an outlandish proposal. Is it for you? Do you think it is the players are locked in as a non-starter? Because I got to believe upper-end players lose money, clearly.
Right.
But that a lot of players could look at this and say, I want anything that will force the teams who are sitting there every year at $60 million, $70 million, $80 million, that they got to jump up to double that and more, 170. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you're taking hundreds of millions of spending from Dodgers, Yankees, Red Sox, Mets, and stuff, and those are going to, like you said, the biggest name players.
Right.
So from that perspective, those players are like, well, I like signing $400 million with the Dodgers. It's great. But you're then adding, to your point, like a dozen teams are adding 50 to 100 million to get up to that. So the hope is that it sort of balances itself out. But if you are a Shohei Ohtani, the fact that the Twins and the Guardians are spending an extra 75 million and the Dodgers are spending 200 million less is not that appealing to you. But I do think for the overall health of the sport, and this is easy to say from Minnesota covering the Twins, I was also surprised by the floor, their first salvo being 170.
Exactly. That's what surprised me.
What I found really interesting about that, I heard from so many Twins fans who are like, the Twins are at 105 right now. And Twins are like, well, won't the poets say, how could we ever spend 170? Here's the thing. When people see these proposals from, quote unquote, the league is just the 30 owners represented by Rob Manfred.
You're right.
So they're not putting out a 170 floor when they think half the league is never going to be able to get to 170. What that is really pulling back the curtain, and nobody will ever see the books for major league teams like the Twins, but it's pulling back the curtain, and it is a giveaway by those 30 team owners, as represented by the league, of saying 170 is comfortable for most of these teams. We can get to 170.
Yeah,
and teams like the Twins or the Rays or the Marlins or whatever, the Pirates, will tell you, oh, we couldn't even, we're losing money at 120. This, I think, is almost like admitting, like self-reporting a little bit, if you scratch beneath the surface, of saying, we're proposing a thing where 10 teams who are claiming they'll lose money at 120 are now going to be forced to spend 170. That's not going to be wrecking them because they're agreeing to this as part of an overall group.
Great point.
But the biggest point that first of all, the players have been so steadfast against any notion of a salary cap. And if they stick to that, then that's just a moot point, and there's going to be a lockout, and we're going to miss games. So that is really the issue. Will they come off that at all? And it might be a situation where they call it a luxury tax instead of a salary cap or whatever. But the real thing that is sort of fueling this, of how can you force these small market teams to spend 170, is it's all based around the idea of central pooling the local television revenue, so that the Yankees aren't making $200 million versus the Twins making $25 million. The problem there is, how are you going to get the Yankees and the Dodgers to agree to that? Right. If you can put all the money into a pool and sell those rights to Amazon or Apple for billions of dollars and then split it up something close to 30 ways, well, then you're basically trying to mimic NBA and NFL.
Exactly, right.
And that's much more doable. But that is such a massive shift from what baseball has ever been. And so those are my two doubts. Can they centralize all the local television revenue, which would be so huge for teams like the Twins? And then also, will the players come off of the absolute refusal to even talk about a salary cap?
It might take a lockout, to, like you said, a cancellation of games to do it. We'll see. Great stuff as always, my friend. AaronGleeman.com. We don't call him Aaron Gleeman anymore. We just call him
I like that.
AaronGleeman.com. You don't mind that, do you?
I mean, I've been called so much worse.
That's for sure. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Anytime.
We'll see him again soon, no question. Little late, Guardsy, for top five, but if you want to go long, it's up to you, because we don't have Kessler till 5:30.
Oh, we could do that. Yeah, we could do it that way.
However you want to do it.
We will hear from Chris Finch on Julius Randall's finish to the season.
I like that. And maybe our new general manager? Or are you still trying to find the money quote?
We can't go long if we're going to play his quotes.
Bumper to Bumper with Dan Barreiro on The Fan.
From the 1-800-ASK-GARY Traffic Center.
This report is sponsored